Hello and welcome to another Out of Spec podcast. I'm your host, Jordan, joined by our dear friend Jose with Rivian Tracker, which means, as always, we're talking some Rivian today. We have news on Rivian's new referral program, which is something Tesla owners have enjoyed over the years, and it's now come back to Tesla. Separate episode on that. Today is actually focused on Rivians because this is pretty monumental. Many owners have been asking about it, and we have, I think, probably all the details. So let's jump right in.
This episode is made possible by the support we get from Fort Collins Kia. If you are in the market for any electric Kia, not only do they never add market adjustments, they will deliver your car to you anywhere in the 48 contiguous states for out-of-spec viewers. More information in the link in the show notes.
So, Jose, welcome to the show. Good to see you as always.
Likewise.
And I guess a high-level view, what does this mean? Someone can buy a Rivian using someone's code and then you both win?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So finally, for a long time, Rivian fans have been asking for some sort of referral program, right? Because we do the job of selling vehicles, right? We do, a good job of going out there and people seeing the vehicles and being like, oh, maybe I'm interested in driving one and test driving one and then purchasing one. So for a long time, we've been asking for some sort of referral program, and Rivian delivered today with a program called Rivian Rewards, which I like the name a lot. And pretty much exactly what you said, right? I give you my code or URL, and you purchase a vehicle from the R1 shop, right? So it has to be a vehicle that's already built out in the R1 shop. You cannot use this towards reserving one. So like if you have an R2 reserved, or if you put a tri-motor or quad motor R1 reservation down, this will not work on that part. So it has to be, or like a custom configured one. So if I go to Rivian.com, build one out, and then put a deposit down, you can't use the code on that. So it has to be one from the R1 shop, but plenty of options there. So I don't think that's going to be too much of an issue. And once you do that, within 2 weeks of the owner taking delivery of their new Rivian, Rivian is going to give each person, so me as a referrer and you as a referral, 750 points. And you're like, what the heck do those points mean? And it's a point per dollar, right? So 1 point equals $1, which you can redeem in the Rivian Gear shop on their website. So you can buy accessories. You want to get a travel kitchen. You want to buy some cargo bars. You want to buy a shirt, pants, whatever you like. You'll be able to use that in redemption, right? Dollar for points. Excuse me. And then the other piece of it, because that's not all, is you'll also get 6 months of free charging at any Rivian Adventure Network site. And this is per referral. So if I refer 2 people, I get 750 points each, and I'll get 12 months of free supercharging, right? With a limit put at 3 years of Rivian Adventure Network charging for a lifetime. So you cannot get more than 3 years in the lifetime that you have your Rivian in this account. So there has to be a maximum, right? So 3 years maxed out. So if I refer 25 people, my charging is going to be maxed out at 3 years, right? It's not going to go further than that because they're not going to give you 25 years of charging. So that would be crazy. Yes, it would, right? Never have to charge again, never have to pay for charging again.
Right.
So those are the standard kind of prizes that Rivian has right now, with more reward options to be introduced in the future, right? So this is kind of what we're starting out with.
So, I guess talking about what it currently lists at, does any of this surprise you? Did you expect anything different? Because I think we did see this coming. And like you said, Rivian owners tend to be very passionate about their vehicles and they share the passion. And so it's cool to see them finally rewarded for that. But is this along the lines of what you assumed it would be? Or was there like bonuses that you were like, oh, I didn't expect that? Or did you expect maybe some sort of credit to be able to be applied to like a custom configuration? Because they pride themselves having a pretty cool configurator, and a lot of people like to use that and like to order that way. Although I don't know what percentage of order breakdowns are configurator, custom build versus the R1 shop, which basically means an existing inventory option. But there's not crazy amounts of options. So, like you said, there's a high chance of you finding something close to what you want.
Yeah, and I think that's really what it comes down to, Jordan, is that if I've talked to a couple of Rivian folks and they go, yeah, people will place custom orders and then they'll gain access to the R1 shop and find something that they like, or maybe they'll see that a custom configuration is going to take, a few months, whereas maybe they compromise on a color or an option that maybe they will get, or maybe they didn't plan on getting but will get, and then end up getting their Rivian, sooner than they expected, right? And so, we don't know the breakdown of custom configuration versus what's in the inventory, So, but yeah, in terms of expectations, I truly really didn't have any. Like we've seen what Tesla kind of did before and what they've done now, and that's really kind of all that we have to go by, because it's not like traditional auto manufacturers have some sort of referral program, right? This is kind of a new concept in, obviously Tesla's had it for a while now, but it is a new concept for a new auto manufacturer, right? This is not traditionally something that companies do. And so that puts, from a unique perspective, but also, I don't think we know what we expected. I think people were like, yeah, I hope they'll give us some sort of, free charging at Rivian Venture Network, because that makes sense. And it'll be cool if, you can redeem some points and get some merchandise on the gear shop. I think that being able to utilize credit towards a purchase of a vehicle is really neat. I'm glad that they are offering that, because they didn't have to. They could have easily just said, oh, these points can only be used, in the gear shop. And I'm sure, we could have found plenty of things to buy on the gear shop for those that point value. But it does help to be able to say, hey, I can use this towards the purchase of a new Rivian.
Yeah, I was gonna say gear shop and charging alone seems like a good perk. They do have one of the more impressive gear shops as far as automakers go. I don't even own a Rivian, and I would love to own everything in that gear shop.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm fairly impressed with $750. I mean, I know it's an expensive vehicle overall, so sure, that's a small percentage, but at the same time, there's a lot of things in the gear shop that are somewhat expensive. And if you want like a tent per se, that's four referrals and you got a free expensive tent.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
I don't even surf, but like it would be so cool if I just had so many points I didn't know what to do with them. So I would get one of their Allman surfboards that I saw in the whatever it's called, the theater out in
Yeah. Yeah.
Laguna. Yeah, so
Yeah.
that was cool. I mean, that gear store alone is like, oh, they have a lot of things I didn't even realize they had. So makes sense. And I guess people are maybe, I don't know if they're really comparing, like we said off show, but it was like, how does this compare to Tesla's? We can have another episode going into Tesla's, but I think whoever does the referring gets like 500 maybe points or dollars, which could be used towards merch and charging as well. And then the other person getting referred can have like $1,000 off the car, so it still
Mm-hmm.
equals the like overall 1,500, but in like a
Yeah.
different way. So it's just a different approach. But I
Yeah.
think this is pretty cool. I would be curious to see, just like anything else with Rivian or other startups, if we can still call them that, if this stays the same or if they tweak it in a few months. Because oftentimes something will launch and we're like, cool. And they're like, oh, shoot, we should have done this slightly differently. So I'm
Yeah.
really curious to
Yeah.
see if this is the initial, like, this works. And they did a lot of, I'm sure they did a lot of research and meetings to figure out the numbers and everything. But will they pull it back at some point? Because, Tesla's has gone up and down over the years drastically and disappeared and come back. And it's been so hard to get your head wrapped around that, and the whole Tesla Roadster thing was a fiasco. So we'll
Yeah.
see what Rivian does. I mean, maybe they might back it down to 500 or push it to 1,000 if they realize this is a really successful program. So I'm
Yeah.
extremely curious. I'm sure you are too. And are there any questions? Because you've reported on this the moment really it went live. Has anyone fielded questions? Like, is there any FAQ that we should discuss that people might be
Yes.
wondering in the audience?
Sure. So Rivian, kind of hid a lot of their stuff within their terms of service for this referral program. So I read through it and tried to knock out some information and put some bullet points. And I'm gonna plug riviantracker.com because I have an article there that you can find in the top banner. But a couple of things that, first of all, one of the I want to backtrack for a second on awards, because one of the really interesting things that Rivian's doing is to celebrate the launch of this referral program. The first 100 Rivian owners that can make 25 qualifying referrals will be invited to a special Rivian Adventures weekend that they're going to be hosting in 2025. There's no details on the event yet or anything like that, but as you can see there, yep. So the first 100 owners. So it's kind of a race to the first 100, the first 25 referrals, right? And 25 referrals is a lot, and when you add that times 100, I mean that's a lot of new vehicles, and this is clearly designed to help push Rivian vehicle sales, right, at the end of the day. So that's kind of cool. And of course, as you know, I'm going to be pushing really hard to get those referrals and get myself over there to that event, because I think it'll be fun, whatever it may be. It's also worth noting that the points do expire after 2 years. So if you don't use your points, they will expire. So don't sit around on them. Use them. If you on whatever it may be. Um, so that's important. And as you can see there, yes, you can use your points towards the purchase of a vehicle, but it cannot be used for vehicle deposits. So if you want to buy a tri-motor and you got to put $3,000 down, you can't use that money towards that. You have to still pay $3,000 out of your own pocket. Can't do it for custom vehicle configurations or reservations. So you can't put it towards your R2. It doesn't count towards that. But or like the demo store, right? Rivian has a demo store where you can buy vehicles that have been used in demos, and they have a lot of miles on them, but you can save money on that. Can't use it towards that. But once you purchase a vehicle through the R1 shop, you will be able to apply that towards the final purchase price of the vehicle, which is nice. A couple of just other caveats, because of course there are. You said this, Jordan, a second ago about whether Rivian will kind of backtrack a little bit on their points, or maybe they'll be like, "Oh, it's so successful, we'll give you more points." Fine print states that the 750 point reward for qualifying deliveries is only right now for a delivery made on or before December 31st of 2024, right? So the point reward amount is subject to change after that day. So January 1st, 2025, Rivian can come and say, this is now worth 500 points, or this is now worth 1,000 points, right? It's up to them
Right.
seeing how successful and valuable this is. So they're definitely not putting themselves, they're not putting themselves against a corner, right? They want to make sure they've covered themselves. And if you live in Ohio or Virginia, I'm very sorry, but there's some law that prohibits the referral program rewards to be accepted in those two states. So if you refer somebody who lives in another state, they will get their rewards, but you, as an Ohio or Virginia resident, will not be able to partake. That is unfortunate, but sorry.
That's wild. Like,
Yeah.
we're the
Isn't it?
United
Yeah.
States, but every state is completely different.
Everybody.
Anyways,
Yeah.
that's a
Yep.
rant for another day. But this is all. I mean, it's all interesting, and yeah, I'm really curious to see like I said, what happens after that December 31st this year. Because yeah, things could change, and they might change for the better or worse, and that's the
Yep.
typical risk. And then, like you said, the 2 year thing is important to remember, because some people with their points are hoarders. They're like, I'm gonna save these until I can buy something epic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this is just not really the case. I mean, you'd hope they would remind you, but like, I don't know, and let you know your
Yeah.
points are
Yeah.
expiring, like many companies do.
And I'm
But
sure they will, right? I'm sure you'll
mhm.
get an email saying, "Oh, your points expire in 90 days" or whatever. But
do
yeah, if
do
you're
you,
if you're hoarding them, yeah,
Is it, do you
yeah,
know if it's 2 years after you earn the points, or is it like if you don't use anything in 2 years, then they expire?
it's 2 years from
That-
the day you get those points. So like if I get
Right.
750 points today, I have 2 years from today, but if I get 750 points next week, it'll be next week's points will be 2 years from so
Yep,
it's on the day
makes
you earn them.
makes sense. So this will be interesting, and I'm the free charging also is. I'm curious about that. I don't know if fallout's the right word. Hopefully, it's not the right word. But we did do a podcast previously. Last time I think I was on here the show with you about how Rivians were in their nav routing Rivians by default to their own chargers, which in my experience was resulting in full chargers, which is not an ideal customer experience. Now, if you're incentivizing people with free charging, it's not at point of purchase like we've seen an issue with many other brands, especially partnered with Electrify America. That's still a huge problem. I mean, we recently did a video on out of spec reviews on literally last week in LA. Just the stations were
I saw
all
that.
clogged by
Yeah.
people using their free charging plans. And so I'm hopeful that this is not going to result in this, but there are not that many Rivian Adventure Network chargers yet. They are rolling them out. They've made big promises, and I'm excited to see this network really roll out. I'm curious also to see the progression of hardware, and maybe that's a whole other episode as well, like looking at their actual charger and infrastructure plans and everything, because we've seen Tesla hardware start at one place and then gradually ramp up, and now we're at approaching V4 full
Yeah.
Tesla chargers. Because Rivian chargers work great, plug and charge is good, but I have issues with the load sharing sometimes, especially when the station's fairly full.
Yeah.
And so I would love to see that be
We are
gone, just like
seeing
Tesla.
Yeah, and we are seeing some newer Rivian Adventure Network sites. Previously, they would be load shared across 3 cabinets,
Mhm.
and we're seeing that now change to 2, right?
That's
So at
helpful.
least
Yeah.
that is helpful because that will give you 150 kilowatts max on each, which is significantly better than whatever 300 divided by 3 is, because
Right.
math is not my strong suit. But yeah, it's that. And I will say, Jordan, to your point, I think one thing that I've seen a lot of people complain about. I don't want to say complain, but like their concern is, well, I don't, let's say I refer all these people and I don't live near a Rivian Adventure Network site. Like 6 months is going to go by, right? Like, and I'm not going to be able to use these. What they should have done is what I'm hearing a lot of people do, and I kind of agree with them, is that they should have done a like, here's how many kilowatts you get, right? Like you get
Yeah.
200 kilowatts of usage that you can now use, whatever, versus here's 6 months that you have to use this. And I don't live near Rivian Adventure Network, right? My nearest one is an hour and a half away. So like you're telling me if I want to take advantage of that, I'll have to coordinate around using it, which is fine, but like
Yeah.
not everybody has one, right?
Yeah. Yeah, there's various strategies with that. I mean, Tesla notoriously had miles of supercharging, which was kind of
Yeah.
interesting. It's similar to
Yeah.
kilowatt hours, although it did depend on the
Yeah.
car. But also that kind of meant people could just, I don't want to say abuse it, but like now that Tesla has switched to money put towards supercharging, it actually does incentivize people to charge in off-peak hours and do things to help the grid as well as the flow of traffic. So I'd be curious to see if Rivian keeps this 6-month time frame, or if they convert at some point to a set amount of kilowatt hours. And even a video I did with Kyle over Not a Spec Reviews, that was one thing we said was it would be nice if it was not a unlimited free charging plan, but rather just how some car makers do it, where it's like, 1,000 kilowatt hours for free, or whatever Rivian decides, because that way people might use it more strategically. Like, I've got a big road trip coming up, that's when I'll use this, rather than, because the issue we see is people have home charging, but because they want to be cost conscious, they'll go to a charger and then clog up the charger, and honestly it wastes their time, although some people just have infinite time, so they don't really care. But in the grand scheme of things, that can be an issue. So I'm just curious, and I'm excited to see how this unfolds. I will go check out Rivian chargers wherever I can. I actually live really close to one, so I'll probably pop over there every time I see our friend Andreas. He lives right next to it, so we'll just go sit and watch the Rivian charger. That'd be fun. It's like people watching.
And I mean,
see
and remember too that you add all this on, but also by the end of the year, Rivian's going to be opening up their Adventure Network to other EVs.
Right.
So that's a whole nother layer of complexity that we're adding on to here, right? Suddenly, I truly hope it doesn't become the EA, and I truly hope. I hope it's more like the Tesla, where at least it's reliable and they work. And
Yep.
so far, they've proven for the most part to work, but it's a different beast when you open it up to everybody.
Yeah. So that's pretty much it. Unless there's anything else you want to add, this is a quick synopsis of
Yeah.
what's going on.
Last thing
And
I would say
yep,
is if you want to retroactively try to add a referral to your existing
right.
R1 order, you cannot do that. Unfortunately, Rivian has been very strict about that. So people have tried. They've reached out to their guides, the Rivian, corporate or whatever, and they're pretty much being very strict that if your order was placed before today, which is Thursday, August 29th at 1 p.m. Eastern, you cannot apply the referral code towards it. So I'm so very sorry. If you bought
Yeah.
yesterday, you can always cancel your order and place it again if you like, but that's all up to you. Some of these
Yeah.
some of these deposits are not refundable, so that may not be smart.
Right. It's a bummer, but that's just part of the name of the game. I mean, we've seen that, of course, with Tesla and even Rivian, well, maybe not so much for Rivian because the prices have typically gone up, but we've seen Teslas
Yeah.
have price cuts and then people ordered right before the price cut. And it's like, well, we never know what's going to happen. So this is the news as of today. Like you said, August 29th. Things will, I'm sure, change, which of course will bring you back to the show and report on that as always. And, excited to see Rivian's progression with things. We've got models coming out eventually. We'll start to see tri-motor and quad motor eventually. And Rivian Network opening up eventually, which that'll for sure be a podcast or multiple because that could be a lot to unpack, and I'm excited to see that in the real world. We currently have over here at the office a long-term loaner with a Lucid, and I'm really curious to see how that charges, on other chargers such as Rivian's. I mean, it can take 330 kilowatts on EA, so we'll see what it does on Rivian when that time comes.
I mean, originally Rivian in the early days, Rivian's website stated that it could accept up to 300 kilowatts on the chargers, but of course, none of our Rivian vehicles accept that. So we really truly don't know.
Yep. Right.
Until we can throw a Lucid on there for sure.
Right. So, well, that's about it. I appreciate you coming on, Jose. And do you mind if I share your code and stuff? I mean, of course, go check out go check out his write-up on riviantracker.com. Of course, that's where I like to read a lot of my Rivian news as it's coming out. And his code is on screen for our watchers. For our listeners, it's Jose 17 15 7 16. Rolls off the tongue like that. It'd be cool if you could do like
we don't get to
code.
pick these. They're random. Yeah, they're somebody's like, oh, maybe it's attached to your VIN. It's not your VIN. It's not my social security number. It's just a random number that they came up with. It rolls right off the tongue. Yeah.
Right. So
thanks
that's awesome. That. Yeah, of course. Love to have you on anytime. And we'll share more news as we get it. But until then, this is the news now. And referral rewards. So it's called Rivian Rewards. Yeah, that's the name of it.
Yeah.
Rivian name. And that's a good name. You're right. Rivian has good names. And we'll see what happens with Rivian Rewards in the future. Until then,
yes.
Cheers, y'all.